If you're jonesing for an epic wizard hat out and back after work or on a Saturday morning, you can't go wrong with the climb from Tarbell Day Use Area to the top of Silver Star. Basically, this trail is the reverse of the Chinook shuttle with another 650 feet of climbing to the top of Silver Star just for some good measure. By the time you're done with this ride, you'll ring the bell at 14 miles with 3,100 feet of climbing with some of the most epic natural single track the Pacific Northwest has to offer. And it's all right in your backyard if you live in the Portland-Vancouver area. You start this ride at the Tarbell Day Use Area, which you get to by driving up the L1100 road from the 1000 road, which is also known as Dole Valley Road. Climb up the 1100 road for about 3 miles until you get to this open-looking intersection with a great view of the Tatoosh Hills to your left and Silver Star straight ahead. You'll see the parking lot behind you and to your right. Parking can get limited in here on weekends, and please keep in mind that this is also an equestrian trailhead, so don't park in front of the hitching posts and leave some space for trailer parking. Also, don't forget your Discover Pass at the trailhead. They do enforce the Discover Pass here. The trailhead here is pretty obvious. Climb up this rocky and loose surface that climbs through clear cut and up until you see an intersection that points to Rock Creek Campground. Don't ride to the campground. Go the other way, to the left, up the mountain. There is a non-trivial amount of climbing to get up to the top of Silver Star, and the first 3.5 miles of this trail ascends and descends through acres and acres of clear cuts. Wear sunscreen because this first few miles is completely unprotected from the sun's full fury, especially on a hot summer day. The first 2.5 miles of this trail gains about 900 feet total, undulating through some downhill interludes and flat sections before rounding the end of Kluchman Butte, along which the track loses 250 feet of elevation over 0.8 miles of unexpectedly fun single track, which would be the perfect place to train an intermediate rider to go with the flow. This section is just a gently happy good time. If Hidden Falls is the destination, this part makes the trip fun and worthwhile. This is natural and unsullied downhill in that old school style of trail that wasn't built for mountain bikers. It's just a nice piece of single track through a nice piece of forest that leaves smiles on the faces of everyone before it empties into yet another clear cut it climbs through before reaching this intersection right here. To the right is the rest of the Tarbell Loop that travels through to Hidden Falls, which can be a nice destination by itself if the horse people haven't tied up their horses at the bench and left their poop in front of the seating area. But Hidden Falls isn't the destination today. Go left up the hill and cross the road. Here, the forest is managed by the Forest Service and hasn't been trashed yet. It's obvious no saws have touched this forest since the Yakult burn, and it's beautiful. It also means that the trail is in much better shape here with a duffy tread that's not eroded into dust and rocks from excessive sun exposure. Also, the trail gets a lot steeper here.
Okay. Future reference. This trail's steep. It is not a trivial climb.
Like, this is serious stuff. Like, the elevation profile is quite a bit more intense. Like, the trail is going to gain 1,800 feet over 2.5 miles from this point forward, and it does it fairly steadily. The climb is actually kind of fun until you ascend out of the woods, which happens after only about another mile, right at approximately 3,000 feet elevation. Even though that's not normally the timberline in this part of the world, this subalpine elevation on this mountain looks like an alpine environment, and that's a result of the Yakult burn that raged through here in September of 1902. The fires were so intense that the topsoil was sterilized and washed down the steep slopes over the subsequent wet winters, leaving little to no topsoil for the trees to reestablish themselves. Numerous attempts by the Forest Service to artificially induce these slopes to regenerate forest have been largely unsuccessful, resulting in a still relatively barren and exposed slope that offers some of the best views available near the Portland area. Enjoy this unique and rare experience and be sure to wear sunscreen. The trail tread is very loose and rocky up here, and after the 5-mile mark, you'll find yourself pushing the bike up a 26% slope that gains 750 feet over 3/4 of a mile. That's not normally unclimbable, except that the trail surface is all baby heads that just flip out from under your tires. Maybe you could pedal it on a fat bike, but then you'd be stuck up here on a fat bike, and nobody wants that. During the 3/4 mile pushing grunt fest, during which you can either push up the trail or the old road that goes to the same same place, it really doesn't matter which. They're both needlessly painful. What's not painful is the awesome view this area affords. Suddenly, you feel like you're the Von Trapp family in that scene at the end of The Sound of Music where they're fleeing from the Nazis while struggling up that windy mountain pass. It's so epic and it just feels like whatever you're doing up here suddenly matters for some reason. Seeing the landscape look like this really puts the recent wildfires that raged through the Columbia River Gorge into perspective. By and by, the Chinook Trail eventually meets with the Silver Star Trail at yet another ridiculously scenic junction. Seriously, the scenery here is completely out of control gorgeous. You'll be looking around muttering, "This is ridiculous," under your breath a lot from here forward as you see more and more landscape that'll make you wonder if you just stumbled into Zelda or Skyrim or maybe God of War or something. It's like a fantasy world up here. Take a right up the hill here as the climb becomes much more manageable with a 17% slope and a much more climbable surface than where you just were. You're also likely to gain an audience unless you're here on a weekday. I don't think I've climbed this section a single time without someone exclaiming, "Nice mountain biking." Seriously, it's often amateur hour up here with basic bros who drove their G-Wagons or maybe their Wrangler Unlimited up here with their influencer wives wearing their Dolce & Gabbana sunglasses who have never in their lives seen a biker ride up a trail and just can't believe what they're seeing. Like, they look at you as if this is simply not possible, this thing you're doing. Congratulations, you just became part of their experience. Maybe they'll ask if they can include you in their Instagram feed. Anyway, I hope you brought your fancy camera, and if you did, this is definitely when you'll want to get it out. If you look carefully at Starway, which is the mountain directly to the east, you might see mountain goats wandering around. I hope you brought your binoculars as well. From the junction with Chinook, it's another 650 feet of climbing over a mile to get to the true summit of Silver Star, which stands at a majestic 4,900 feet. Of elevation. You can see 5 of the high Cascade peaks up here: Jefferson, Hood, Adams, Helens, and Rainier. The Goat Rocks are also readily visible, as well as all the fire damage in the Columbia Gorge. On a clear day, downtown Portland is clearly visible, and if you come up here at night, you can see the city spread out below with the radio towers flashing away far below your current location. It's truly a remarkable experience. There's a foundation for an old fire lookout up here. The trail is actually an old road grade. There was still snow on the last section of trail the day I rode this, as the woods up here holds on to snow for a significant amount of time, and this route won't ever be snow-free at least until June. After enjoying the view and eating lunch, you're ready to head down the mountain, which has to be not only one of the most well-earned, but also one of the funnest descents there is. A select few people do shuttle up the Forest Service Road on the north side of the mountain a couple times a year just to ride this descent. In my opinion, you might as well just climb it, though, as the road is in atrocious shape, but if you do decide you want to shuttle it, I have another video all about that option. Anyway, watch out for hikers as this section gets ripping fast and the surface is loose. You don't want to create any nasty surprises as you make your way down. Be sure to stop along the way to drink in the different views as well. Keep descending and keep a very close eye out to your left for the entrance to the Chinook Trail, because even though you totally came up this way, it's super easy to miss this intersection. This descent is easily one of the finest in the area. This is definitely where you'll appreciate having all 160 millimeters of your travel, because you're going to use all of it. It's a lot of shoving the bike in front of you while trying not to get bucked off the pedals. It's hard to really overstate the beauty of this subalpine descent as you tumble down the switchbacks through the ever more frequent patches of noble fir that you originally climbed through to get up here. The trail does frequently need a bit of a haircut in places, as the maintenance is somewhat infrequent up here. In case it wasn't obvious to you on your climb, you should be aware that this surface is loose and downright unruly. The turns are tight and loose as well, but really this just adds to the fun of the descent as it requires you to stay vigilant for the entire trip down. You'll be likely to notice your joints feel significantly shaken up by this descent. The most fun part of this ride down the hill is also the most short-lived, as the quality of the tread improves immensely as the trail re-enters the forested section, which takes maybe 2 minutes to descend if you're lucky. But what glorious ripping 2 minutes this is. It's the ridiculous quickness of this descent that makes it viable as an after-work ride. If you cut out the final push to the summit, it takes 2 hours to climb to the saddle right before the patch of trees near the top of the mountain where the real fun descent is, and 45 minutes to descend back to the car from the same point. Did I forget to mention that you get a 45-minute descent? Isn't that awesome? I mean, Yeah, there's a little climb back up Klutschman Butte in here, but it's only like 300 feet and it's super gentle and quick. Anyway, once the clocks change for daylight saving time and sunset moves past 8:30 p.m., there's plenty of time to ride this whole thing right after work if you get off early. This is more than worth the effort, and with the amount of elevation gain, it is more than adequate for one of the days on your weekend as well. The descent after rounding the knob of Klutschman Butte has some surprisingly tasty sections of downhill on it, and gently satisfying is definitely what you'll be looking for after the Chinook descent. This route is a classic out and back, and it's really hard to actually get yourself permanently lost here. If you're worried, just find a clear cut. There's plenty of those around here. Anyway, you'll eventually end up back at the car, tired and happy. And now, whenever you see Silver Star from the city, you can say to yourself, I rode my bike up that.